Right. You know, history unfolding this afternoon at the United Nations. In less than 5 hours or so, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will stand before the leaders of the world and ask for recognition as a state. Joining us this morning to discuss the significance of that request and the efforts by the United States and Israel to make sure it fails is Robin Wright, Senior Fellow at the U.S. Institute of Peace, joining us live from Washington. And here with me in New York, James Rubin, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State and Executive Editor of the Bloomberg View. Let me start with you, Jamie. The U.S. Wants to avoid a vote. I mean, they would like this not to happen. President Abbas is still going to make his application. What happens next?
Well, the U.S. has been scrambling in the last few days to try to dissuade the Palestinian president from going forward with this application, or at a minimum try to avoid a situation where enough votes are in the Security Council to pass it that the U.S. needs to exercise its veto. My guess is that the Palestinians will go forward, will submit the application, but there will then be a discussion both in the Security Council and possibly in the General Assembly where the U.S. does not have a veto. Although it doesn't have the same power, it could allow the Palestinians to get a victory, which is something I think that President Abbas is desperate to get at this point.
Can I ask you about the president, our president, President Obama, on the campaign trail? Republicans are hitting this message that the president has somehow thrown Israel under the bus. So you have this background, I guess, noise from a political season, and then you have this reality happening at the UN. How do you square those two?
Well, you really can't in the end. The president, in his speech at the United Nations, made a rather startlingly compelling description of the plight of Israel in the Arab world over the years, and it was a remarkably supportive statement. And the fact that he didn't try to do the same thing about the Palestinians who've been seeking their self-determination tells me at least that that his last year in this term is going to be focused on the domestic side. And that could only change. There's only one way I think that could change it, and you saw the pictures from the region of protests. The problem with the Palestinian cause, unlike Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya, is it's not seen by Israelis in particular and the United States in the same way because there aren't hundreds of thousands of Palestinians peacefully protesting. If they can get that going in a way they've never been able to do before, that really could transform the situation and make a link to the Arab Spring, which is what they've been trying to do. But they've never been able to sustain long-term peaceful protest. I think that's the only way there'll be a real movement this next year.
Robin Wright, let me bring you in because, you know, Jamie brings up Arab Spring, which is such a great point. That should be the movement that is celebrated and talked about at this session. Yet, the dialogue, the debate, the issue, the controversy continues to be Israel and the Palestinians.
Yes, one of the side effects of this move is that the focus of the last 9 months on what is really an epic convulsion, a political turning point for the entire region, begins to be diverted or derailed. The focus has not been on Israel, the Arab-Israeli conflict. There hasn't been the kind of anger toward the United States that we've seen over the past 60 years. This was really a turning point in relations with the international community as well as the political situations in each of their countries. And the problem is that now with this vote, the focus of the Arab world will look increasingly at Israel, and the danger is that the tensions deepen, that positions harden, not just between the Palestinians and Israelis, but by the Arabs in general.
Because as these countries, these democracies begin to develop and governments there begin to be named, they will start taking positions on Israel. No question, that puts the U.S. in a pretty difficult spot.
Absolutely. As these countries begin to develop platforms for parties that will be key in the new elections, the danger is that they take positions on Israel that are then written in black and white and are not so easy to erase. And that then sets the whole process, the whole mood of the region back in very serious ways.
So, Robin, just quickly, what's the next step? How do you get the peace process moving again?
Well, one of the interesting questions is whether this is going to harden positions or whether this will kind of jumpstart. President Sarkozy of France has stepped in and talked about an alternative where a program where within 1 year you get to a final agreement with 3 different steps, whether there'll be some kind of movement. The problem is you always get back to the issue of Jewish settlements, and the Palestinians say that they are not going to negotiate until there's a freeze, and the Israelis say that they're not going to freeze. So there are a lot of different issues that still have to be sorted out before they get back to the negotiating
well,
table.
you always get back to some of these old issues, Jamie. I mean, some of these problems and disagreements that seem almost intractable from the outside.
Well, the Israeli-Palestinian issue, you know, it's remarkable. Yesterday, the former Prime Minister of Israel, a Likud party member, a conservative party member, wrote an article in the New York Times pointing out how close he was just a couple of years ago to an agreement. We know the destination, 2 states, shared Jerusalem, the amount of territory going back to '67, that refugees will go to a Palestinian state, not an Israeli, not Israel. We know the destination. It's the journey. It's how to get there, how to have a combination of an Israeli leader, a Palestinian leader, and an American president who's got clout. The biggest change we face right now, I'm sad to say, is that the leverage an American president usually has is based on his popularity in Israel, his ability to affect the political realities in Israel. And President Obama, for better or worse, is not particularly popular in Israel, and that limits his leverage to do the kind of things that Robin mentioned, that you've talked about, in terms of encouraging the Israelis to make the environment compatible with negotiation.
All right, Jamie Rubin, Robin Wright, real pleasure to see both of you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank
Thanks.
you.